From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 Studios in New Orleans, is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm Vasilios. That is Sean Fazende. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review. You guys can find us wherever you listen to and watch your podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the little bell notification button right there. You get an update every time we upload a new podcast. Sean, happy Wednesday to you. We are now officially in week 15 of the NFL. Slowly closing in on the end of the season, and the playoffs are looming, sir.
Playoffs are looming. Happy Wednesday to everyone out there. I was out there at Saints camp today. It's always a different feeling when they're coming off of a win. Good vibes out there. They're feeling good. They're feeling, I guess you could say proud, or they're just in a good mood, obviously. And look, they won a game. So that's in all my years of covering the team, that's generally what happens. When they win a game, they feel pretty good to start the following week. So they have a New York Giants team, a little hot right now. Won 3 straight. Got the, they've taken the league by storm with this
Tommy DeVito.
Tommy DeVito. The charisma combined with the Italian American heritage has made him a folk hero up in Jersey, New York. So that's coming down to New Orleans this week. So this game looked kind of ugly a couple weeks ago when you saw it on the schedule, but now it may have a little life, may have a little juice based off of who's playing, and also what's at stake. The Saints are 6-7, and there's a lot on the table for them. So
you say life, and the Saints' playoff life might rely on a win this game, and that's kind of what we're going to get into today with the big picture here. Playoff debate, Sean, and we were talking about this off air. Should fans want the Saints to make the playoffs?
It's an interesting debate because, Jeff Duncan had the commentary. Fans are somewhat conflicted about this team because they want them to do well, but they also know if they do bad, it could lead to change, which could lead to better draft picks and could lead to a different, a different era or a shift in the organization versus, you're in the thick of it right now, and the goal is to always win. Saints fans have always wanted their team, their organization to win. So the great playoff debate is upon us. Really, the fact that we even have it just seems to show where the fans seem to be with this version, the 2023 version of New Orleans Saints. I'm not sure they would have had this debate in any year like this, past years like this, where they kind of seem kind of stuck in the middle like a lot of teams in the NFL. So, like you said, the question is, should fans want the Saints to make the playoffs? And I originally... Well, let me start with this. It's a moot point. The Saints are going to do everything they possibly can to win the division, make the playoffs, and try to make a run into the playoffs. They have not checked out on the season. They have not given up on the season. We talked to the players today. They still feel like they can turn this thing or go on a run or whatever, do enough to get into the postseason. There are way too many players at the twilights of their career on this team to check out on the year. Ironically, though, the fact that they have so many guys near the end of their careers is the fact that they're kind of in this position where the playoffs may or may not be possible. So that's point one. Point two is this. I was originally going to say, 25-year-old me would have a different response than where I'm at right now in my life. A little bit older, a little bit wiser. I'm a dad now, married, got 2 kids, and, it's a different place in your life. But the truth of the matter is, even if I were younger, I would still want the Saints to make the playoffs. I would still want the Saints to make the playoffs. And even at 25 or whatever the case may be, there's always that feeling. There's always next year, better draft pick, all those types of things. And I get it. But get a little bit older, you get a little more wiser, you get a little bit, hey, these opportunities don't always come, and next year isn't always, guaranteed, that sort of thing. So, I'm in a little different spot. So I see things, I feel like a little bit differently, but I still think 25-year-old me would have been like, nah, we still got a chance here. Let's make the postseason. Let's make the playoffs. So let's start with that. Point 2 is, and this makes it really easy, in my opinion, they're 6-7 and tied for first, not 3-10, and one of the bottom feeders of the NFL. That would make it easier. And I think fans at would probably accept that right now, knowing that change will be coming, much like back in 2005 when it was the end for the Hazlitt era. They went 3-13. It was not a good place to be. Perhaps that would be easier for Saints fans to accept, but because they're 6-7 and they're in this little post, Breeze rut, it makes this debate, I guess an interesting one. I was asked about this on the radio, and I had paused for a second when he asked me about it. I was like, He goes, it's hard, isn't it? I said, yeah, I guess it is, but now that I really have had a chance to process it, no, I still think, they're 6-7. They still have a very good chance at winning the NFC South, despite the fact they've been inconsistent and up and down. I don't think anyone else in the NFC South has been consistent enough to have any sort of faith that they're going to win it right now. We know it.
Right.
So the Saints are right in there. And you get yourself into the tournament. Who knows? Maybe you catch a team on a bad day. Who knows? Maybe you get a home game if you win the division, and that home field advantage matters. Who knows? Maybe you catch a team that has the injury they can't overcome. Who knows? Maybe you just play the best game of your season and you beat a team.
That'd be something.
But none of that's possible if you don't get into the tournament.
Right.
So, fans, if you ask me, yes, I think you should want the Saints to make the playoffs because they have a very realistic shot. I mean, as bad as it's been, they still do. And not just win the division. They can get a wild card as well. I mean, the 7th seed is 6-7, right?
Yeah.
Green Bay?
Yeah.
So, yes, I think you should. Now, let's be realistic here, okay?
Yeah.
Let's talk about what I think is the absolute ceiling of the 2023 New Orleans Saints. I'm talking everything goes right. They're able to, win enough games, win a division. What could they possibly do? The absolute ceiling, in my opinion, is divisional round of the playoffs. That's if everything goes right. Everything goes right, and they win that division, and they catch a team at home in the wild card round. It's hard to beat a team on the road in the playoffs. And even that seems a little far-fetched.
It does.
I mean, wild card round is probably where it would settle in, probably where it would average out.
Yeah.
And then the floor, in my opinion, I'm gonna get killed in the comments for saying divisional round of the playoffs because I know that's not what anyone wants to hear right now. But I'm very realistic about if everything were to go, if you were within reason, everything went right within reason. I think that's as absolute far as this team could go. The floor, I don't think they're losing out. So I think the floor is 7-10. Mm-hmm. I think it's realistic they would go. It's within the realm of possibility they would go 1-3 down the stretch. On the flip side of ceiling, floor, so 7-10, and had absolute best divisional round of the playoffs. Go ahead.
Okay, so I kind of want to bring a little counter argument to what you're bringing on. So you're talking about the home field advantage during the playoffs. The home field advantage, and that's no offense to any of the fans out there right now.
It's been horrible this year. You're absolutely right.
So you got to really calculate how much of an advantage that can be.
Well, and look, in this hypothetical scenario, to get to a spot where they're hosting a playoff game, they would have had to win a few more games. So maybe you're feeling a little bit better about where you're going, but you could equally feel just as bad about this team. This is not me pumping this black and gold team up. Please don't get it twisted because that is not the case. I'm just saying if everything were to go right, within the realm of possibility, where's the absolute ceiling? That would be where it would end up, in my opinion, the absolute best. But look, you average it all out, I think it's between 7-10 and divisional round of playoffs, probably somewhere in between there as well.
Yeah.
And I guess here's the other thing about should they want to make the playoffs, because if they do bad, it would force change and they would get a better draft pick. Let's just say they hit their floor and it's 7-10. Well, last year, 7-10 picked between, there were 6, 7, and 10 teams last year. They were slotted to pick between 8 and 13. I didn't all pick there because of trades and everything, but that's where the order it would have been in the draft, between 8 and 13. So my point is, even with them trying to make the postseason, it's still not a guarantee because we've seen how inconsistent they are. So fans could still, that are on the let's blow it up, let's not make the playoffs, they could still get their wish just by them putting max effort, and it could still end up that way. And look, the draft pick scenario, like I said before, you're not 3-10, but let's just say you end up 7-10. You're picking somewhere between 8 and 13, and everyone talks about the draft pick because they want the quarterback or they want a new between 8 and 13. You're in the mix because you have ammunition to move up at that point to get a big time quarterback in the draft. So to me right now, first off, Saints are in this column because they're trying. They got too much invested into this team. They've got too much invested into this roster. They've got too much. They put themselves on the line. I mean, they thought this roster was good enough to get back into the playoffs. All they needed was a quarterback, they felt like, and here they are. So they got to finish the job.
Yep.
But the two schools of thought of, should fans want them to make the playoffs and not want them to make the playoffs? I think that's where it kind of ends up. I say, yes, they should want it. But even if they want it, the idea that they could try and miss would still work out in the favor of the team that doesn't, of the school of thought that doesn't want them in the postseason. Because, as I said, if they don't make the postseason, they're probably going to be 7-10 or 8-9, which would get them somewhere between 8 and 18 maybe in the draft first round. And then you got some ammunition because remember you got 2 second-round picks. Well, no, you only got 1 second-round pick. I got to go back and check. But you still have enough. A team that loves to move up, you would have enough ammunition to move up if that were what you wanted to do to reset the franchise with a new quarterback. It's an interesting debate, isn't it? Because it is. It's
and there's nothing like playoff football either. Playoff football is
you just don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly. But I mean, I've talked to a bunch of Saints fans about it. A lot of people that I know down here, and they're all like, "We just don't want to be given hope because once we're given hope, then we're going to start believing in the team, but then they're going to let us down. We can't go through more heartbreak."
Yeah. It's a really delicate place because it's like you should want your team to win.
Sure.
And if your team gets into the postseason, regardless of how it feels, they got a chance. To me, when you're in the moment, you should take that chance.
Yeah.
You should want that if you're a fan. Regardless if you're discussed with the head coach, the coordinator, the quarterback, the defense, whatever the case may be. If you're in the postseason or you get to the postseason, you see it through. I don't.
Yeah.
And that's I'm trying to, because I've been so desensitized from that stuff now because I've been covering the team for so long. But I'm trying to really think back to Sean, the fan. Yes, I would have wanted my team, regardless of how ugly it was, to get into the postseason.
And you got to think about it too that even if you want this team to lose out and you want them to secure a draft pick, there's no guarantee that draft pick pans out.
That's the other thing.
Because I mean, you look at last year. I mean, Chris Olave turned out to be a really solid pick, and then you ended up benching Trevor Penning.
Yeah.
And I mean, the year before that, what was it? Paulson Adebo they drafted in the first round. Peyton Turner
in the first round.
I mean, it's
exactly. There's no guarantee. And look, the difference between 6-10 and 7. Oh, excuse me, 6-11 and 7-10, which is what if they were to lose out, they would go 6-11. It's the worst they're going to be. I just said 8-13. Between 8 and 13 was last year's 7-10 team. 6-11 would be what, like 6 or 7. So it's a better draft pick, but it's not crazy. It's 1 or 2 picks ahead if they were to get the best 7 and 10.
Just out of curiosity, I kind of want to look at who was drafted in that particular group right there.
Well, there was some move ups and moving up and moving down. So it's not the actual team that finished 7 and 10 that actually made those picks.
For sure, but I'm just trying to get like a gauge on like the talent that was picked there. Essentially, like who was a hit, who was a miss. But I mean, I think really though, you want to get to the playoffs, but I understand wanting to force some change because I mean, even if they make the playoffs, Sean, would you say that there still has?
I'm glad you brought that up because the mistake would be okay. We got to the postseason. Yeah, we're all good. See, we told you. That would be a huge blunder, a huge mistake because you would that would be a huge slap in the face. I mean, to Saints fans, that would be a huge slap in the face to people that have watched this team and understood what the circumstances were this entire season, given their schedule and who they played and when they played them. To where if you were to finish strong enough to get into the postseason, great. But you would still have to take a hard look. I think roster changes are coming regardless because, as I said, a lot of players on this team in the twilights of their careers. But, you're going to have to make some shaking up on your coaching staff as well because they make the postseason, DA's coming back. And even if they don't make the postseason, I still lean towards, especially if they go like 8-9 and one game out. I could still see them bringing DA back, but I still think you got to take a hard look at your offensive staff
for sure
and really see really look at that and say, yeah, we need some improvement there, at least in terms of what they've been currently been able to give you from a production standpoint.
All right, so
good debate,
fantastic debate, and I think we saw plenty.
Leave your comments, please.
Absolutely.
Leave your comments about that debate, because I'm sure
I'm
sure the ones that are going to comment are going to say, nah, let's just start over, let's just go, y'all are crazy.
No.
But I think the ones that aren't going to comment probably agree.
Yeah, there are definitely pros and cons to both sides, but I mean, do you want to have more Saints Sundays or do you want to have less Saints?
That's it.
That's really all
it
it comes down to.
I agree.
All right, so Wednesday, it's the first practice of the new NFL week. Anything stand out to you, Sean?
Yeah,
from being over in Metairie.
Yeah. The injury report came out and Derek Carr wasn't on it. So he talked to us today. He was in a good mood, good spirits, talked about a lot of things. Thought he was pretty good with the media today. Talked about the booing, talked about his relationship with Jimmy Graham, talked about where they're at as an offense. I thought it was pretty decent Q&A with the media. So he's got for his season, the way it's gone, he's got a pretty clean bill of health. This guy has dealt with shoulder, back, rib, concussion. So he's dealt with a lot. And obviously he's never missed a start, but he's been knocked out of 3 games. So that was the biggest thing, is he's off the injury report altogether, which we knew he was going to play, but to not have him limited in any regard is big. But also Rashid Shaheed and Taysom Hill were both back. I don't know I think they might have officially been listed as limited. Yes,
limited. With Taysom foot left hand still, and Shaheed still with the thigh.
Okay, so but if you get Taysom back, that's huge. If you get Shaheed back, that's huge. Now, Olave wasn't there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring that up.
So that's interesting. And then Andrews Pete missed with an illness, so we'll see if he comes back.
And Foskey and Kendre Miller still DMs.
Yeah, look, Foskey and Kendre Miller, it's a lost cause at this point. I mean, they need pass rush help and they need running back help, and neither of those guys have been available. 2 guys you drafted early in the draft. And their rookie year is going to be a wash regardless of what they do from here on out. But getting a few guys back helps, Taysom and Rashid. And then obviously Derek Carr not even being listed on the injury report, to me is a decent sign in terms of his health. But Olave not being available potentially, that's something to watch, because Carr and Olave, regardless of their issues all season, they've really turned it on post-bye. I mean, you get the Atlanta game, Detroit, and obviously in Carolina as well. A game where they didn't throw a lot or didn't have a lot of big completions. I thought he and Olave still had some decent rapport there in that game.
How worried are you about this Giants team? And we'll get into this more later on this week, but they don't have a DNP right now on their injury report. It's all just limited practice. This is a Giants team that could come in at relative full strength.
Yeah, and Wink Martindale's one of those defensive coordinators that send, all about him.
I know all
about
him.
Guy. He shows one thing, he blitzes from an opposite way, another guy drops out, another one comes down, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard.
His defenses have one of the highest blitz percentages.
Yeah, and you don't know where it's coming. And you don't know who's dropping out. You don't know the covers that they're in. Now, when you have a blitzing team, they leave themselves vulnerable to big plays. I'm sure you know all about that in Baltimore when he was there.
Cost him a lot of games.
So, I think that's a concern. And then you got a guy, Tommy. He's Tommy Cutlets has been playing well. Think he might come down to earth a little bit this week. There was a Monday Night Football, Jersey, everybody out there, bright lights, and and they won. They earned that win. They beat a team in Green Bay that doesn't lose in December. So, but you come off the high of a Monday night game, a short week, noon kickoff, and a place. The atmosphere is probably going to be. It hasn't been lively inside the dome at noon on Sundays the past couple weeks. So who knows how the environment's going to be. But the Saints are still favorites. And I still think when you add it all up, I think the Saints can win this game despite the recent charisma and the recent uptick in Giant relevance over the last couple of weeks.
All right, well, it's the Big Apple versus the Big Easy on Sunday. We'll have more on that on Friday with a more updated injury report.
Yep.
We'll get more into depth into the matchup on Friday. For Sean Fazende, I'm Vasilios. It's been the Fox at Overtime podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.